I'm Amber, this is Spider Couple, and today we have a very special guest who's here to teach you about how to build an enclosure from scratch for your new pet. Stay tuned. With multiple degrees from such distinguished universities such as Harvard, Yale, and Oxford, and over 65 years of experience, both in the field and in the lab, please welcome Mr. Dr. Professor Corbin.
Good morning. My name is Mr. Dr. Professor Corbin. I have degrees in ology, and today I'm going to show you how to properly house your bug, aka spider. And I brought all the materials I needed along with me today. In here I've got water for the spider, substrate for the bug, food for your bug. What else I got in here? Different types of substrate, which are always good for your animal. The all-important water sponge. Toy. And finally, the spider, which you have to be very delicate with. If you drop spiders, it can do a lot of damage to them. This is known as the Yarnicus amberus. We'll set her here while we get the setup ready. And I brought a water bottle for myself also. Okay, so before we get started, I think I should have a little bit of water. So first we're going to talk about proper enclosures for your bug. You're going to need something with plenty of ventilation so the bug can breathe. And in this example I'm going to use this shoebox. It's a perfect container. This is an arboreal species, so it likes to sit on the bottom all the time. It will not burrow most cases because it's yarn. And what you want is a lot of ventilation, so this has plenty of ventilation holes. These are a little on the small side, so this might be a better enclosure for, say, a sling or something of a smaller species. But for this example, we're going to make this work. So if you don't feel like it has proper ventilation, feel free to put more in it if you'd like that. So you want to make sure that the enclosure is sturdy, which this is very sturdy cardboard. A spider cannot get through this material. It's got plenty of ventilation. It's nice and dark, which spiders don't like light. And this, as long as you keep the lid closed, you'll never have to worry about the lighting in the room that you're keeping your bug.
Hello, I'm Amber, and I am not an idiot. I will be showing you the right enclosure. So you're going to want to make sure that your enclosure is sturdy. It can be either glass, it can be plexiglass. What you're going to want is something that is escape proof, that has good ventilation, and that is accessible for you. So depending on your species, you're going to want a square for a more terrestrial species. You'll want a larger, taller enclosure for arboreals, and then you'll want something that has both good ventilation and the ability to hold a lot of substrate for something like a fossorial species. So today we are going to be using Exoterra, and we like Exoterra, we like Zilla, and we like Zoomed, just because they're easily available in our area. And then we have our sling boxes are completely different, and we have a video on that as well. But today we're going to be doing these two enclosures so that you can see the correct way.
Now we're going to talk about substrate. There's lots of different substrates you can use for your bug. It's all a matter of opinion and everyone has their own preferences. But for my uses, I like to use a mixture of bark and dirt, and I mix that thoroughly. You could just use this cardboard box. Spiders don't need anything really, but it's always good to give them something to make them feel more at home, like they're in their natural environment of outside. So this is a mixture of bark chips and dirt from the yard. Beautiful. And then you could always add something to structure climbing surfaces such as rocks. Maybe 2 rocks. And then just to give it that live outside feeling, we'll also put in some grass. And if you ask my wife, she always needs flowers. So I've got these beautiful flowers that we got from one of the cheaper stores. They're just synthetic flowers and you can put those in there too. Substrate isn't totally necessary, but it's all subjective to the keeper.
So this is the coconut fiber substrate that we use, and I know a lot of people don't like to use it because they've had problems with mold or bacteria growing in it, and that's it just depends on where you live. And we have never had any problems with it, so until we do, we're going to continue to use it because it's cheap. We're also using Reptisoil, and Reptisoil, when you mix the two, we have found that it makes a more even substrate. It holds moisture better. It, I don't know, what would you say that it does? It's just...
Holds its form.
It holds its form. Spiders don't like walking on lots of... I touched it. They don't like walking on loose sand or substrate because it makes them nervous.
It packs well, holds the moisture, holds its form. It's easy to burrow in. It's a very nice mixture. Everybody has their own mixtures.
Yeah, lots of people use vermiculite. This is what we use.
This is something we found works very well.
We also sometimes put in the, what is that stuff called? Jungle mix, which is a little bit different. So the 3 mixed together seems to be our favorite combination, but this works just as well. And since I only have the 2, that's what we're doing today. So now that we have our substrate prepared, we're going to clean out the cages. And what we're using is a solution of white vinegar and water, 50-50. And this is the cheapest, safest, and easiest way that I know of to disinfect. There are some other commercial products that you can purchase, but this works just as well, as long as you're making sure that all of the vinegar is gone before you introduce a spider.
So once you've had the basic setup with the substrate in your enclosure, next thing you want to make sure is they have some sort of entertainment. They don't make television screens small enough quite to put in this box. So you could always get something like this blue thing. I'm not sure what it is, but spiders love shiny. So you could always put this in the corner, and it acts as an alternate substrate also that can go nicely with the grass and the flowers. Plenty of room to roam around and hide underneath the toy. But besides that, you want to add some sort of hide for your spider. Hides are important, so if they get scared or nervous in any way, they have somewhere to go and they feel more secure. So I had a hide here. Hold on. This would make a great hide. Perfect size. So we'll add this in here too. You might want to bury it a little bit with other stuff. Here, we get a shot of that hide in there. And then they can crawl right in there if they need to. And don't worry about the alcohol in the shot glass. Spiders love to be drunk. So it's not a big deal. And so that's basically what you need for toys for your spider. So next off, you want to think about moisture and water for your spider. Spiders do, contrary to what some people do believe, they do need water in their enclosures. They don't necessarily need a wet enclosure depending on where they're from, but they do need access to water. So in this case, it's always a good idea to use a sponge. They sell them at your local pet store, but why spend all that money when you can just use a simple kitchen sponge? One side they can sharpen their fangs on, the other they can stick in and drink. So just find a nice place for that. You could cut it down if you wanted to, but we'll just put it in the side here. And then you can wet that sponge down, but if you want to make things a little easier on yourself, just stab a hole in your water bottle and put it next to the sponge. And then it will constantly be soaking up the water. And if you need to give it a little push, if you can get a shot of that, you can get more water in the enclosure very easily.
Here we're going to set up a proper enclosure. You want to make sure that your substrate is at the appropriate depth for your species. If they like to burrow, they're obviously going to need more. But we are setting up an arboreal cage, so we've got this nice long piece of cork bark that's going to act as a hide in the corner. And we've got these fake plants here that is not going to stick to the wall very well. And of course flowers. So every spider needs flowers. Make sure that your cage has appropriate lighting. If your spider does not like to be in bright light and is photosensitive, make sure that you're aware of that, and never put the cage in direct sunlight. It will heat the cage up too much, and spiders don't like that anyway. When preparing your water dish, be aware that it will add humidity if that's needed, but never use a sponge. A sponge is like the worst idea you could possibly use because sponges harbor mold and bacteria, and you don't want to introduce any of that to your spider at all. If you're worried about things falling in the dish, use a slate chip, but never a sponge.
So the next thing we need to talk about is feeding your spider. And a lot of people like to feed them. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit of a mess here. But this enclosure is very stable, don't worry about it. So if you don't have access to things out in the yard, or if it's winter months and you don't have access to other sources of food, Fruit Loops are a great source of nutrition for your spider. I would feed them, at least once a week, but you want to give them a substantial amount, maybe about that much. And that should hold them over for at least a week.
As an alternative to Fruit Loops, you might try insects. Here we have crickets that are gut loading. We just throw a bunch of vegetables in the day before we feed the spiders so that they can get all the nutrition they possibly can. An alternative to crickets are superworms, and it's nice to give the spiders variety once in a while if they'll take them. We typically feed the scorpion hornworms because they don't burrow immediately and it gives him time to find them and eat them. Plus, they're an excellent source of nutrition and water. Of course, these are just some of the insects you can use. You could always use dubia roaches or nutrigrubs or fruit flies depending on the size of your pet. It depends on what your pet will eat and what is the best nutritional content for them. I would suggest looking up a feeder insect nutritional chart online for more information.
Now that you have your basic enclosure set up, you want to do your rehousing. Now I have a very docile spider, so let me pick her up real quick. This is a Yarnicus ambris, very docile. So you can hold these, they're extremely poisonous. But in this case, I'm not afraid to hold it because I know its characteristics. Let's get you a good shot of Yarnicus. Now in putting them in their new home to make them feel at home, you want to gently place them in And then before they can run out, you gotta slam it shut. And there it is. All right, let's see how the spider is getting along in its new enclosure. Carefully, because they do like to bolt. It's probably taking advantage of its new hide, I would assume. The excellent shot glass hide is a perfect size for that spider. So, I don't see it in here. Oh, there it is. All right, Yarnicus, he got out of the enclosure. So maybe we should put something on top of this to make sure he doesn't escape again. There you go.
Now that we have an enclosure built with the proper components, we will do a rehouse on a real old world, not Optimum Wearability species, an old world species of Poecilotheria ornata.
All right, so here's the proper way to do a rehousing on a old world spider. This one happens to be a pokey, so it's very quick and very venomous. So we do it in the bathtub just to keep it from running away. If it does get out or bolt during a rehousing, we have time to catch it before it gets too far.
So no spiders are poisonous. They are all venomous. Poison is something that you ingest that is detrimental to your health. Venom is something that is injected into you. Now this is Vishnu. She's our Poecilotheria ornata, and it was really time to get her into a new enclosure because it was too small for her, and she's decorated it so pretty with dirt. There she is. She's so cute. And she did so well on this rehouse. She just plops right in. Here she goes. So she's looking pretty drab here. You notice you can barely see her against the bark, but these pictures she molted the day after we rehoused her, so she's looking really pretty now. Look how cute she is.
All right, so let's see how this spider is coming along this time. With the vodka bottle on top, there is no chance of escape. And there she is. Beautiful. She looks like she's getting along fine in her new enclosure and very happy. Now, one thing you need to know about your bug is that they love to be held. You just gotta be gentle, but you can hold your bug, especially old world. Old world love to be held, and then when you have an old world, you can hold it against your chest and pat it on its head. And if it's feeling insecure, you can put it in your shirt, and then it feels nice and secure. Don't try this with the new world though. Only the old world like this. One nice thing about having an old world in your shirt is they like to cuddle up against your skin because you're nice and warm. And if you didn't already know this, old world, OW, also stands for optimal wearability. You can wear your spider in your shirt, you can wear your spider around your neck, you can just carry it around in your hand. It's fine. They are poisonous, but they're harmless.
So some species of tarantula you can handle, and you want to make sure that your particular species, if you're planning on handling it, is one of the appropriate ones to hold. Now, in general, spiders don't like to be handled. They like to stay in their hides or their burrows or wherever they've chosen to make their home and be left alone. But you can hold some species, depending on their temperament, depending on the potency of their venom. There are some species that can be handled. This one right here is an Avicularia morph type 6. Used to be called Avicularia metallica. And she is just a dolly. She's beautiful and she can be handled, but we don't do this very often. Please remember that these are living creatures, and even docile species, if threatened, will react.
So I hope you found this information in this video useful, and it will help you in your future endeavors to house your bugs. So this is Mr. Dr. Professor Corbin signing off.